you could be denied care because you had some type of pre-existing condition, pregnancy,
diabetes.
Diabetes. I mean, really, just a list of things. Why do we have health insurance companies? We don't need them. We don't need them. We know we have already run a massive experiment for now 60 years on a single payer health insurance program, and it's called Medicare. And it's wildly successful. To the extent that it's not, it's only because people have been trying to chip away and privatize different parts of it. But we're doing that already with a quarter of our country. There's no reason why we shouldn't have single payer health insurance for everybody. We don't need insurance companies. People talk about bureaucrats getting in between your doctor and your health. Anybody out there who has dealt with it, and I'm old, I'm much older than you are and everybody here. The dealing with your health insurance, when you're younger, you don't use it as much.
Right.
Dealing with your health insurance, talk about bureaucrats getting involved in this. It's a huge pain in the ass. And Medicare is a much easier program.
What's really crazy is when I left Vice and I went to join Fusion, there was a week period where I was not employed and I got a kidney stone. And holy crap, I had to go to the hospital. And thankfully never had one since. They tried charging me, I think, what was it? It was like, I think it was like, $16,000 to $18,000 for a 3-day stay. And I was just like, what? Yep. I laid in a bed, dude. But here's the best part. I said, hey, I just switched employment, so I don't have insurance. And they went, oh, no worries. And then they sent me a bill for like $39.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, hold on. Where did that money go? Why were you trying to charge me that money? How does that make sense at all? It literally doesn't.
The problem is that health insurance, there is no incentive for insurance companies to keep costs low because they basically get a percentage of what the expenses are. The way that you contain costs is by having a single payer that can look at the data across the country and assess, is this a valid treatment or is that a valid treatment? There's been, all sorts of studies on this. And we could save this country a tremendous amount of money long term, but not just the country. I'm saying as individuals, plus on top of which all the pain in the ass that's associated with your health insurance. And this is one of the things. This brings up again, we have an election in 3 days. I think Donald Trump is garbage, frankly. But the real concern I have about Donald Trump becoming president is that it's going to empower the Republican Party. Mike Johnson the other day said he's going to cut the ACA. And now, aside from the fact that the Republicans tried to repeal the ACA like 50 times or whatever, I don't care about that.
They're lying, by the way.
Well, they're lying because they have no ideas about this. And to the extent that they're going to change anything, I mean, Trump did, attempt to do on the margins to disable the ACA. There are 3 aspects of the ACA. And it was originally called the Patient Protection Affordable Care Act, PPACA. They dropped the PP thing, which I think was a real problem because that's actually what this law did better than anything else. It expanded Medicaid. So you had millions of people, low-income people who had the ability. Not every doctor takes Medicaid, but to the extent that they could get a provider, millions of people who had health insurance for the first time. The other thing it did is it created these marketplaces. This was sort of a right-wing subsidized industry deal. I think it's a useless, it didn't lower the cost. It bent the cost curve, but it basically just slowed the rate of increase on insurance. I think we can do a lot better with a single payer thing. But the third thing it did, which is also the most important for us right here in this room, is the patient protection part. Prior to this, you could be denied care because you had some type of pre-existing condition, pregnancy,
diabetes.
Diabetes. Yeah. I mean, really, just a list of things. You could be denied care or you could be charged an exorbitant amount. The other thing that could happen is that, like you say, all of a sudden you have kidney stones. 80% of the cost of health insurance in this country is borne by 20% of the people.
And
You don't know if you're going to be 1 out of 5, but if you are, it's going to end up costing you $18,000 or you're hit by a bus. The insurance companies used to say you have an annual limit. So, you got hit by a bus, you're in the hospital for 2 or 3 months. I'm sorry, buddy, but you just ran out of your health insurance. Or annually, lifetime. So you get cancer, your treatment costs this amount. Not only have you exhausted it for the year, you've done it. But when Mike Johnson says he's going to cut the ACA, what they're talking about, and when he said we're going to, not everybody needs this insurance. Young people maybe feel like they don't need this health insurance. When they do that, the only way for them to do that is to raise prices on everybody else. Yep. And so the whole point of insurance is that I may not need it in my 20s in the way that I would need it in my 50s. But I'm going to be 50. And so it smooths it out.
I think...
And that's the whole point. And that's why I really am, again, with my hesitation about Harris, because of, particularly in terms of Gaza, which we can talk about in a moment if you want. But
there's
the putting the Republicans in power, they have gotten progressively worse on all of these issues over the past 20 years.
There are two things I think that play a role with the ACA especially. We had a Republican on IRL, and he just said they came to me and told me not to vote in favor of it. They said specifically it's a wedge issue we want to campaign on, so let's keep it around. This is what I see with the bulk of politicians. They're just pretending to support things, and then they dangle. I mean, they said Obama said he wanted to codify Roe, and then he didn't. And it's been a talking point for a long time.
I mean, the thing that Obama expended all of his political capital on was the ACA. And I think they did want to codify Roe, but I don't think, frankly, I can tell you that in talking to, people in that world, they never thought the Supreme Court would overturn it.
I definitely want to get into that, but I want to add one more thing too, is what the Republicans and Democrats have both privately been saying is, and this is funny because I think one of the arguments against these major healthcare, I shouldn't say healthcare, but like insurance companies is the bloat and bureaucracy that is created in the system, which seems to solve nothing, but actually cost us money. And then you hear these politicians have actually said, a large portion of our economy is these health insurance systems. And so if we were to do away with it, you're going to lose all of these bureaucratic middle managers. And I'm like, they're concerned about getting reelected if there is a perceived economic downturn from loss of jobs.
No, I mean,
none of that is an argument for or against healthcare.
No, I don't think that's the case because look, there's going to be, you're going to need people to administer this stuff. I mean, a lot of people in the healthcare industry would still have jobs. It's just that they would be either the government would contract to them, as it's done, to a certain extent now, to do this work. It's just that we would not have shareholders who where 10% of what's going on or 20% of what's going on is a function of shareholders.
Let me ask you a question, though. So there was a story, I think it was out of Georgia, where some young kid had a genetic disorder and there was a treatment, but it's some kind of like rare genetic treatment that cost $1 million to produce. And the family had sued the state saying that the state should pay for this because it's part of a plan that they had with government benefits and something like that. And the state argued, we can't pay $1 million every time we have to do this treatment. And so the challenge then becomes treatments for diseases go so far as technology can allow. I'm sure there's grant programs and ways we can develop technology, but what do we do if we do, say, like single-payer healthcare and there's 10 people who have a rare genetic disorder that's killing them, but one treatment available? How do we assess? Is there like a triage system? How do we distribute that?
Oh, how's it distributed now?
Rich people.
Well, okay. I mean, look. I mean, there's some. I'm not saying that sickness is going to go away with a single payer healthcare program, but the bottom line is that fundamentally more people will have better coverage and ultimately more money in their pockets, despite the fact that we'll have to tax more for it. But over the course of their lifetime, will have more money in their pockets and will not have the insecurity that comes with losing their job, wondering whether or not, like you say, in between jobs, they will not have the headaches of like, oh, my insurance company has dropped me this year, or I've got new programs, or I have new things. That's, you will find after your kid is born that half of your time is spent on like all of this like bureaucracy in the private healthcare industry.
What if instead of taxing more, we just reallocated existing taxes? Theoretically lowering it in some areas.
We what?
Reallocate existing taxes. Because people pay a lot already, right?
Do they though? I don't think so. I mean, if you look at taxation relative to like the 1950s, you know what what the top marginal tax rate was?
98%.
In 1950.
All they did was pull loopholes and other BS to avoid
No,
it.
actually, that's not true.
It is.
No, it isn't. If you can actually. I can tell you right now. Some of your libertarians.
Let me explain something real quick. If the government came and told me they were taxing me at 100%, I wouldn't pay any of those taxes. It's never going to happen.
If the government is taxing you 100%, you will not work. You will not pay for those taxes, and you will not get it.
I will work. I will make money. And so the issue is
you will commit crime.
No. It's Donald Trump brought this up in 2016 when he was like, we utilize the system as it exists to avoid paying through the mechanisms. For example,
in the 1950s and 60s.
I get it.
No.
There's $1 million deduction for equipment, for instance. So value earned can be retained outside of the U.S. dollar without paying taxes on it.
Great.
This is what a lot of people do. So they can tax as high as they want, but wealthy people will always get around it, and poor people can't.
In the 50s and 60s, the highest marginal tax rate, over $470,000 if you earned, which would be equivalent to about $3 million a day. Every dollar over that was taxed at a 90% rate. We had the greatest economic expansion this country has seen during that time period. Now, part of it obviously has to do with post-war World War II. There's a lot of factors, but the tax rate did not inhibit any of that growth. The effective tax rate.
No, I agree.
The effective tax rate. The effective.
Inflate's the wrong word.
The effective tax rate, it was 50%. So that includes all of the deductions, all of the hijinks that's associated with that, the loopholes and whatnot. 50% for those high earning. So you don't. I don't need to raise taxes on people who are making.
But we don't need to argue this because I don't think that's the point. There's any point of contention. I'm saying that if you go to people and say we want to give you health care, but it's going to raise your taxes, they're going to recoil in horror. Whether it's good for them or bad for them.
I think Bernie Sanders was on the way of making that argument. But if you, if you and I advocate for single payer health care and we get other people to advocate for single payer health care, we can do this. Are we on board?
Thanks for watching this clip from the Culture War podcast. We're live every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon. So subscribe and come hang out.